a lot of people going about the Sale game, the same Sale try, incredible try, but I think some of his group stage performance as well. I think it was Cast Baz, I think was it, who absolutely ripped it up. But then the Sale game, then I remember the papers that week, the Limerick leader was like, "Oh, a star is born," and then I was like, back in my head, I was so jealous. I was like, in my own head, I was like, I hope he enjoys it while he can. And then I got in and I met Baz and he was sound to me and I was like, oh my God, I'll take all that back.
So I'm going to take this fella's place.
Joe presents Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby, together with Guinness.
Okay, hello. You're very welcome to a very special edition of Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby on Joe together with Guinness. This is our final episode. And for a very special episode, we decided the last couple episodes we would just basically talk about ourselves. Last week was my chance and Chris Henry came on. And this week we turned the spotlight onto Barry. So I'm very excited. Barry, any announcements?
So excited to talk about myself. This is going to be a bumper 3-hour episode, I think. I've got a lot of shit I need to get off my chest, man. I'm coming after people.
Well, so anyway, a little bit of housekeeping first up. This is the last piece of housekeeping for this season. Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby is on a new YouTube channel each week. The video version of our show will be found on that channel. We have 900 people who have fallen for it so far, and hopefully they will continue to fall for it. So
yeah.
Are you all set? Are you all set? Do you want to fasten your seatbelt there?
Yeah, I'm ready, man. I've done no preparation for this. Just thinking about myself for a while, which was grand. Went for an old walk last night and did a bit of meditation this morning. I am at peace with my mind. Do your worst.
I think I need to do more meditation, Barry. I know you were just off air. You were just describing radio presenters who were they were staring into your soul. They were so present whenever they were listening.
Dermot Whelan from Dermot and Dave. We were on with them yesterday in Doolin on Today FM. And Dermot, I know, was really into mindfulness and he was looking into my soul as he was talking to me. He was so engaged. And I was like, that's because he's so mindful. And I had meditated quite a bit. So I was like, trying to play mind games back with him. I wonder that's where we'll get to. We'll just be thinking thoughts and just throwing thoughts at each other.
I'm one of the most mindless people you'll ever meet.
You're so at peace with your mind. You've closed the door. You're gone.
No, the opposite. An example this morning. So I left the girls to nursery this morning, and we're still pretty much locked down, and I'm not driving anywhere, so I'm never in the car, and I never listen to any music or any content or podcasts unless I'm in the car. So that was my one window. That was a precious 5 minutes on the way home from nursery.
5 minutes.
Yes, and my precious 5 minutes I wasted because I was staring out the window like an absolute dummy, mindlessly listening to the wheels on the bus because Molly asked for it on the way to nursery and I forgot to change it. So I was there, wheels on the bus, go round, and I caught myself on. What a waste of the best 5 minutes.
Tapping the steering wheel.
Yes. Loving it. Wow. Anyway, so that's how mindless I am. That's why I need to spend more time with you. And I might sign up for, did you say that guy teaches it?
He does, yeah. I think it's dermotwhelan.com. A bit of mindfulness. I haven't seen it, but when you see him looking into your soul, I've heard him talk about it on a few podcasts. It's very impressive. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it in our off season. That can be our therapy of a Tuesday morning. We'll do it together.
Yeah, let's get mindful. Okay, namaste. Right, let's kick it off. Let's kick it off, Barry.
Go on.
Okay, retiring at the premature age of 28, Barry left so many questions unanswered. He was the Gary Ringrose of his generation, and Gary was the O'Driscoll of his generation. But O'Driscoll was in your generation. He's a mystery. Barry, you're a mystery. And in today's episode, we will unpack the mystery that's Barry Murphy. Yeah,
that's great.
We will peel back the foreskin of Barry's life and lay bare his best kept secrets. I've been reading a lot of Sally Rooney recently, so
Oh,
this
did
could
she
get
talk
quite
about
sexual.
did she talk about foreskin?
Yeah, your foreskin specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Is that's one of her earlier books?
It is, yeah. It didn't get
Okay.
published.
Yeah.
So we're going to be asking all the big questions today. All the big questions like, what's the best stadium I've ever played at? And who's the best player you've ever played against? And is it Barry or Baz? And are aliens real?
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. You got serious. You got serious there.
Yeah.
So let's
Yes,
take you
they
back.
are.
Let's take you back. We'll touch on that later on. Let's take you
Okay.
back to the early days. We've got a couple of guests today. We've
Mhm.
got Keith Earls and Mick the granddad, Mick Murphy, Barry's Faja.
Yeah.
And Faja. And so I thought your dad would be good to speak to about your upbringing. He would give us, an amazing insight. But he says you didn't really have an upbringing, or he doesn't remember anything about your upbringing.
Yeah, he doesn't remember before 2003, I'd say, when I played my first Ireland under 21s game. I'd say, like, prior to that, it's a bit of a blur.
Yeah, so you did have a childhood, though.
I did. I was born in 1982, November 28th, 1982, which is actually a mirror image of itself, which is quite interesting.
Wow. You're a mystery.
281182. Isn't that fascinating?
What's that called?
Numbers. I know what you mean. There's something magic. I remember our team doctor was absolutely fascinated by it. Every time I'd go in to get something checked or looked at my foreskin, would you look at my foreskin again? Jesus Christ! And we get sidetracked on my birthday every time because he was fascinated by it. But anyway,
funny. I would have thought a doctor especially would have encountered more dramatic stuff in his life, and still he just keeps coming back to the birthday, and that just stumps
every time. Like there'd be queues out the door of his office. You'd be waiting there for 3 or 4 hours to get into it, and then when you get in, you'd realize why. It's because he'd then spend a half an hour talking to you about the importance of numbers in your life and what my birth date means, whereas in fact it means none.
He's the guy in the meme with like the compasses and protractors and numbers and all. That guy.
Exactly. If we spend as much time as we had on my birth date, and then like, is this the way it's going to progress? We'll get through nothing. We'll get through nothing.
Okay. Tell me about mini rugby. I want to start there. Was it give the ball to Barry?
No, definitely not. Mini rugby. My dad was a huge rugby man. Played for Bows. My first memories, I'd say, as a child, are going to. I think my first ever earliest memory is being about that height and all the dicks that would be around your face, because I'd be in the dressing room of my dad. My dad still played, and being in the dressing room in Anacotti.
That height from the desk.
To the dick. To the dick. So there'd be I've jumped. Being in my dad's dressing room when he played for Bows as a 4-year-old in Anacotti, and all the lads and the fucking, I was like, wow, that's one of my earliest, probably most scarred memories. So I remember the smell of deep heat. I remember it being like 5 o'clock on a winter's evening. It was dark, and I was like, I don't know. There's something obviously that's etched into my memory that I loved it. And my dad was so into rugby. He would make it quite dramatic when we'd watch it. The All Blacks, the haka, all that kind of crack. And then, yeah, I grew up on a cool road in Limerick called the Hermitage, which is obviously where the name of the band comes from. And there was myself and my older brother, who were 2 years apart, so we were very close. And then there was 4 lads moved in right next door to us called the Hartigans, and they were mad into sport. And then another family moved in around the corner called the Garveys, 2 boys, mad for sport. And we used to just play rugby and football all day, man. So, and it was so much that, like, the five of us ended up playing on the same AIL team for Bows. 3 of us ended up playing on the same Munster 21s team. So we kind of grew up together, and I think mini rugby started when I was about 7. That was out to Bows, which was across the town, and yeah, I was so skinny and so small that I was never like give the ball to Barry, and I wasn't particularly fast. But
Was it keep the ball away from Barry?
a little bit probably. Um, but I was tough. I think my brother was so big; he was massive. He was a prop, so I used to try and tackle him. So I wasn't like you when you were saying last week. You loved the rough and tumble.
Mm.
It's not that I loved it because I wasn't probably big enough to get stuck in, but I wasn't afraid of it. And uh, I think my underage rugby really developed. Like we lived behind St Munchin's College, so right beside it. And what my dad went to Munchin's, and we used to go up there and watch senior cup matches and the senior. And I used to be so taken away by the crowds and those lads were superstars. So I think by 7, 8 years of age, watching that, I started proper falling in love with rugby. And then I think we used to play a lot on the road, like tip rugby till like 11, 12 o'clock at night. I remember neighbors coming out, like, going, lads, will you go to bed? Like it's 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And I think I developed a huge amount of my skills and whatever ability I had was on that road playing 4-on-4, 5-on-5 tip. And I think appreciation of space and that kind of crack. Um, so I was hooked between that and soccer. I was pretty hooked early doors.
Yeah, you had an extremely unique running style, and you always had the ball in two hands. An infinite amount of dummies, and unusual dummies, and like a kind of heavy stepping. And I'm thinking specifically of the big try against Seal 2006. We'll not get forward to that yet, but I would imagine that style was kind of developed, and just kind of came on quite a bit then during those days whenever you were just finding your feet and finding your love for rugby. Then tell me how then did that kick on? Then you started playing for Munchins, and was the Schools Cup was that a big deal? Like up here, the Schools Cup's everything. I remember crying our eyes out because we got put out in the first round of Schools Cup. Was that a big deal for you guys?
Yeah, huge. So yeah, went to Munchins at 12, and what I love about sport, I always did back then, was it was just the fun of and the crack of playing it. And I think my obsession was about creating space. I loved being able to, like, I was so small when I was younger that I never could really take a tackle. So that's probably why I developed that sidestep, and that it was all about don't let someone get a finger on you, as opposed to um you know, trying to develop that heavy or that style of running. It was just kind of trying to, "Oh, don't touch me, or I'll be tackled too easily." So, and then when I went to Munchins, it was still good crack. The school's rugby was so serious, man, that it used to get me down.
Really?
I was so bad at school as well. Jesus. Just to give you an idea what kind of young fella I was awful at school. So my only outlet
You mean
was sport.
academically? Really?
Academically, sorry, yeah. I just couldn't focus. I had no interest. It was, it was a squirrel, like staring out the window. Just what you were saying, around about your mindset or whatever. I would be just so distracted. I loved it. I absolutely had the best crack in school, and I wasn't too much of a mess or anything like that. I was just had zero interest academically. So my main outlet was sport. All I wanted to do was get out the door at the end of 3 o'clock and kick a ball. And but then like junior cup got quite serious, but not overly serious. We won the junior cup, and that was huge. Munchins hadn't won. I think Axel Foley was the last person to lift the cup for Munchins, and I remember he came in and made a presentation to us afterwards, and
wow.
that was class. And so that was when it got serious, but I knew that I was good at something anyway. And you could see the connection between that and professional rugby at that point. Then went on to play senior cup. As you said, it's the same in Limerick. It was like all that mattered in the world was winning the senior cup, which is absolutely ridiculous because we were beaten in the first round by a good Crescent Comp team. We had by all means the dream team, like we 4 or 5 Irish schoolboys.
Oh, really? Right.
And I never did transition year, so I was quite young going into senior cup. I would have had another year if I stayed on in school, but I was so done with school academically. I hated the leaving cert and all that, so I just wanted to get out of it. And I actually ended up resenting rugby massively by 18, because it had gone from that game that I loved to play to just this, I don't know, massive disappointment and pressure. And it just moved from something that was all about me and my mates. Like when we were growing up, we didn't essentially have coaches. It was lads' parents that would come down and help out, and we ran the team. But when you got to senior cup, it was coaches coming in being so strict and telling you what to do. And I know that's important and stuff, but I struggled massively with that as a teenager. So when I left school at 18, I was done with rugby, man. I was like, nah, no interest in pursuing this. I'd never played schools or anything like that. So it was quite a yin and yang love-hate relationship I had with it back then.
Yeah. So Munchins then, would that have been the equivalent of one of the big Belfast, like would it have been one of the big names? Because we avoided that, and we always thought like the likes of Belfast Ints or some of the big Belfast schools, a lot of their players experienced exactly that. They got sickened of it in school, and they were just drilled really, really hard, and it lost fun. It wasn't as much fun for them. Whereas we were lucky, we were a country school. We weren't that good. We actually had a good group of players coming through, but we avoided that because we weren't that good.
Yeah.
And as a
Yeah.
result, it kind of it helped us out later on. You know, a few guys went on to play for the club and just continued to enjoy rugby. So is that just because it was too intense?
It probably was, but then you're 17, so you've got so much more going on in your life. You've got the fecking hormones, you've got girls, you've drink coming in, and then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I love music. I was, the idea of going off to college, and I think, like as I said, the strict structure of school and not having, lacking so much confidence in school that I just wanted to get away from it, and I wanted freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I loved rugby as an outlet, and it kind of became a little bit too structured as well. So it definitely was, but then I was a disaster as well. So I'm not pointing any fingers. Like I was all over the shop. Like so. I think I've had that struggle throughout my career as well, and that I would have gone into Munster first and gone, Jesus, what's this? I've no interest in this kind of crack. And it's that internal struggle you have with yourself to kind of appreciate the challenge that's in front of you and know that you're going to be better, which I don't know if you ever have that in the moment, but I can look back now and know that, the game was always giving me a huge outlet, whether it was, too strict at times or what. It's hard to know, but I think as a kid, I always had, like, and I still do. I dream massively. I'm a daydreamer, so all I wanted to do when I was a young fella was play rugby. Like, and I would sit there and just dream about playing, and I would create scenarios in my head about me playing big games, and I would literally, I feel like I've dreamt certain tries I've scored. And the same thing came from music. I would dream about playing on big stages as a kid, and I would dream about, you know writing certain songs. And I've always, that's been really powerful for me growing up. All that is always like being able to manifest my dreams, as corny as that might sound. But I didn't have anything else really. That was all. It was like, as I said, didn't feel like I would do anything academically. I could apply myself to working in an environment where, if you sent me out into a field and told me to dig a hole till you get 50 feet deep, I'd just go out and do it, because it was something easy I could apply myself to. So when it came to sport, it was the same thing. It was like, oh, I can do this, so I just need to go out and do it. And so yeah, I've always had that dream-like affiliation with it, where it's like, yes, it's all magic and dream. And then when it gets hard, I was like, fuck this.
Yeah,
This
it
is tough.
it was a dreamy kind of stage of Munster rugby, though. It was easy to be swept away. Or maybe was this before, kind of before they won the first European Cup 2006. Is that right?
Yeah, but it had started like there
Yeah.
was by when I was in school, like they'd already gotten to a Heineken Cup final during my last year in school. And that romantic side of it had definitely started. There was a buzz there. And by the time when I left school, I went back, played with my club for a year under 18s. It was just me and my mates come back playing, and I grew massively in that year. I went working. I went to college for a few months, but dropped out. Went working in a restaurant, and then went working in a plant and tool hire company, which was gas cracks just down the road here, just driving trucks and vans and stuff and working with old lads. And I loved that 9 to 5. And then going out training in the evenings, and I got a real love for rugby back, and I think got a good idea of how good I was again, got a good grip on, geez, I'm actually decent at this. I grew physically as well at that time, and then got into the Bowes Academy at 19. I was like, right, that was UL Bowes, so it was kind of an up and coming big academy, a big feeder team for Munster at that point. And then
back then, Barry, there was no provincial academies as there is now.
Yeah.
Because then the first time I met you was the Ireland Academy in Clongowes. Is that right?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? So
yeah,
I would have. It's a funny story. Like I was 20, and I went on a J1 to America for 3 months, and I was about 72 kgs. No interest in being a professional rugby player. When you think of like young fellas now that are in the academy and stuff, it's polar opposite.
Yeah.
But I hadn't touched a rugby ball in 2 months, and there was Munster 21s trials, and my dad was like, "Come home from America." I was in Boston. He was like, "Will you come home?" And I was like, "No, I'm not coming home." And it's one of these sliding doors moments that you've talked about before, and these little decisions that you make in life that end up taking you down another path. And my uncle had to get on to me in America and be like, "You need to come home from your J1. Your father will never talk to you again if you don't at least give this a go." So I came home and played a Munster 21s trial out in Garryowen, and I was on the bench, but Ian Dowling, who I'd never heard of before, was on the bench with me, and the two of us went on at half time. And I remember thinking he was a bit mental, which he is. And he'd like absolute freak strength, and he was 12 and I was 13, and he would just, no one could tackle him, and he would just offload the ball to me, and I was running in tries and had a great time. And I was like, Jesus, this is cool. And there was a little bit more freedom to it, and I got picked on the Munster 21s, and I went from July never playing rugby again to the following Six Nations playing for Ireland 21s, and then got my first Munster cap. So within 10 months I'd gone from that to Munster cap, so it was pretty insane. And then got the Irish Academy, and again that was all pretty daunting. I think the Munster thing was less daunting because back then I got a call on a Wednesday to come down training on a Thursday, and then I'd never trained with them before, trying to learn the moves.
Took her for a drink on Thursday. Surely.
Took a day off on Friday, and then by Saturday. So it was back then. It was, I don't know, it was a bit more romantic. There was no, I don't know, it's very relaxed, and I loved that side of it. And then got into the Irish Academy. I found that daunting as well, man. I found that
was a horrible week in Clongowes. Miserable. Training was so tough, and Mark McDermott, he wasn't a big fan of mine, to be fair. And I was so shy and so nervous. I don't know if you experienced that at all, but it was a daunting environment. And then
terrifying.
It was just summed up with him on like the final morning fitness testing at 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, and he went around banging the doors, and it was just mentally exhausting. It was terrible. I hated it.
We were sponsored by Powerade, and there was all bottles of yellow Powerade around the place, and Jody Danaher had gone around and squirted all the yellow Powerade into people's sinks, making it look like he had pissed in everyone's sinks. And Mark McDermott saw it and assumed that because the toilets, I think, were down the hall, and he was like, "Don't use your sinks to piss in," or something like that. I think that's why he got us up at 6 o'clock in the morning, because he thought Jody Danaher had pissed in the sinks.
I remember chatting to you. I think maybe one of my first conversations with you, you weren't doing conditioning because you were off your feet because you were too light. And I think then you'd said, like, I usually stay pretty fit, so I'm not going to lose anything. But if I can't keep weight on, then that's going to hurt me more. And I just imagine you, like, do you remember the episode of The Simpsons where Homer tries to put on enough weight that he can work from home? He's like, we're losing precious calories.
It's the moo in my fat man hat. Yeah, I do. I remember that. And we tried to get Phil Morrow on the show with you last week, and I was disappointed we didn't. He got called away to train with Saracens in the afternoon. But Phil was their strength and conditioning coach back then, and he was the one that put me under lockdown basically, and used to just sit beside me and force feed me. But I think he was so good at making you feel normal and making you, I don't know, he really put me at ease and mentored me through that phase, because a lot of the time when you go to those things and coaches are telling you you're too small or too skinny, it's like, you're fucking 19 years of age, you don't know what to do with that. Like, it's like, what? So I really respected Phil for a lot of how he managed me through that period. And I learned, like, again, I hated it, but man, I learned so much, I think, in those environments. It was tough, and it was so competitive because you really had only 5-6 players from each province, wasn't it? So, it was really, really competitive, and they were hard, and skills were hard, fitness was hard. So yeah, that was kind of my first introduction to it. And I did this writing course a few years ago, and it takes you back into writing about your childhood and those kind of moments that change your life. And it was really interesting diving into that time and looking back on it, and I've got journals from that time as well that I've looked at, and you can see the progression of like how my lack of confidence as a 19-20-year-old. And then 3 months on, I've got like my schedule written out for the day, what I'm going to eat, and just the program, and very streamlined, and my attitude changing over a few months on the journal, and just really loving the routine and the environment. And I think when I first got into Munster, that was so daunting, but incredible to be surrounded with the talent that was there. And I was just, but thinking back, how lucky I was to have made that step was unbelievable.
Yeah, so let's talk about that transition then. So as we were saying, like, it was a daunting environment going to Colongos for the Irish Academy, but it must have been even more daunting for you straight after that, then going into the Munster environment with O'Connell, O'Gara, Axel Foley, Stringer, all the big names. How did you find that?
I found that pretty tough when I first got signed as a development contract out of the academy, and Alan Gaffney was coaching. And like I said, with Phil, I really, I really needed a coach that would put their arm around me and kind of, I don't know, look after me a little bit more. Gaffer wasn't essentially that. I got on really well with him, but he wasn't that kind of guy. He told
me to piss off one time on the pitch. I think I did something that wasn't what he asked, and he just goes, "Piss off, Trims." And then I went, like, "What do you mean?"
What do you literally?
Yeah. And then he was like, "Piss off, Trims," and I just did like a lap of the pitch.
Went away. Away from him.
Dexton loves that story. Anytime I do anything annoying, Johnny just goes, "Piss off, Trims."
And it's great to look back and laugh at that stuff, and I do, and as I said, I get on great with Gaffer now. If I go to Australia, I try and meet up with him now with the band. But as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, it was in front of these superstars. If I drop a ball, he would literally abuse me, and it was, I hated it again. I was like, oh, I'm signed for 12 months, but I was like, I'm not doing this. And I got injured, and I remember getting injured in the early, like maybe October, got a groin injury. I knew I'd be out for about 8 or 9 months. It was that dreaded osteitis pubis that we talked about a while back with Tyg Byrne. And I remember going surfing right on a Tuesday, and we had a meeting at 2 o'clock, and I went surfing on the Tuesday morning with John O'Connor, and I came back and we were late, and I missed the meeting. I just sat in my car, and then they came out, and I just slipped in, uh, unbeknownst to everyone, and I realized that no one even noticed I was gone. So I would do that all the time. I just not show up to meetings, and no one had a clue whether I was just down surfing in West Clare for a good chunk of the 8 months that I was out. Uh,
It's
and it was
brilliant though, being anonymous. I missed the squad photo my first year when I was in development contract. Missed the photo, and no one even noticed.
unnoticed.
It was great.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing and a great thing at the same time, because I was like, what's the point of me being here? No one knows I'm here. But obviously, I was probably missing out on something. But I loved just having that time to myself, and it was better for me than sitting in a fucking meeting. And then when I eventually got back to playing, Gaffer was gone, and Declan Kidney came in. And you know, I think coaching is really funny because you get certain coaches that would be really good for you at certain times in your career, and Declan Kidney could not have been a better person for me. It was um he was so relaxed and made me feel that I could be myself. His first day was like, do you remember the way he used to just pass the ball in Munchins? That's all I want you to do. Pass the ball like you did in Munchins, and just go out and enjoy yourself. If I feel like I need to have a word with you, I'll pull you aside and I'll say it to you, but just go out. And I immediately felt relaxed. And as you said, with the players, that was the first year. That was 2005, 2006. That was the first year I'd played a few times in the previous 2 years, was the first time I properly felt a part of the squad. And it was like O'Connell was young back then, so he would have been only be 23, 24. So he was driving standards and driving. He was the engine, but I don't think he was that authority that he became. So um, I was pretty relaxed around him. Raj was the kingpin, as he always describes himself. He was, and he was so integral because he challenged the coaches so much. You know, when Gaffer was there, like there was. You remember Gaffer used to walk around the pitch with his phone on his phone, just like chatting to people, and Raj would pull him on that, like you can't be chatting on your phone, and with Kidney, he would challenge Kidney all the time. He was a thorn in their side, and he just wanted to win, 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 and it was
Playing Candy Crush. Playing Candy Crush, was he?
Yeah. Is that what he was doing on the phone? Yeah,
Yeah.
always. Yeah. So I was a bit kind of overwhelmed by Raj, definitely back then. So you never knew where you stood with him. It was you never do with Raj, do you? You never know where you stand with him. It's he's the alpha male all the time. So but he was the real fucking brains of that team. Axel on the other side was I think I took a warm to Axel straight away. I kind of felt like he respected me and loved me no matter what. It was a weird thing that I developed with him early on. It was just a little connection that we got, and took me under his wing a little bit, and without really having to say or do much. And I just felt really I belonged in that Munster team, do you know? And I think that's what Kidney created, and that's what Axel created. And it was just such a special few years.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And so whatever Axel contributed and Decky contributed, you obviously contributed a fair bit yourself as well. So everybody knows the try against Seal. Kind of some of the early tries, the one against Cardiff. Cast Earlsy he'll probably chat later on about Cast. You're tearing Cast apart. But I went through highlights, a few clips the other night, and
Limited, I'd say.
it was quick. And but the soundtrack was Hermitage Green as well.
I know.
That's
and my
perfect.
most hated Hermitage Green song as well.
Oh,
whoever
no.
put that together.
Well, I was sitting watching that in the kitchen, and Anna looks over and she goes, "What a tune!" It's like, that is brilliant. Like you can write the soundtrack to your highlights reel. No one else gets to do that.
That's true. That's
so-
true. And then, sorry, Harsh being my most hated song. It's a cool song. It's just that one that everyone's like, do that one.
Oh yeah, it's like Smells Like Teen Spirit, is it?
It's not quite like Smells Like Teen Spirit. I'll be honest. Let's stop the comparison right there. But
So,
yeah,
well-
I get you. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing.
So we'll get into anyway. So you kind of found your feet, and then obviously that try against Seal kind of put you on the map a little bit, and then probably contributed to you feeling like you were really part of that team. So we'll get into that. We'll probably get into that a little bit with Earlsy, but up next we've got your dad. Your dad's going to come on and share some stories about his take on your career with Munster and Ireland, and then obviously he's nothing to say about your upbringing, so he might
He had nothing to do with it anyway. It was all my mother, so better off.
So anyway, next up we've got Mick the Granddad. Okay, we've got Mick the Granddad sat there like the president, looking spotty dog. I'd say it's the first time you got dressed up in the last few months, Mick, is it?
Yes, I've never been up this early during the lockdown. But anyway, thanks for the invite, lads. You've done a great job in your podcast. I don't know how you could speak for 4 months without a rugby ball being kicked, but fair dues to you.
The length of the shows have increased since.
Trimby, every Tuesday when we do the show, as you know, Orla takes the children and leaves the house so I can do this in peace and quiet. But she brings them to Mick's house, so the kids are actually in his house now.
yeah. And as usual, they're the best babies I've ever seen. In the kitchen, not a sound, just behaving themselves. Just like you did, Barry, when you were a baby. Yeah.
You don't remember that. We've clarified this already, Mick. You don't remember my childhood.
No, you were so good. You were so good. Trimby asked me for a few stories, and I'd have to make them up.
Jesus,
you did get blamed a lot for what your older brother did. As we found out years later that you didn't do half the things that you were blamed for. Brian did them all, but he managed to get them shoved onto you. So,
yeah, it's the trick of an older brother, isn't it? I would have done the same to the younger fella.
Mick, you're sat strategically displaying potentially. Am I right in saying is that the try Barry scored against the All Blacks, or is that another try?
Yeah, behind me, it's a painting that a well-known Limerick artist, Una Heaton, painted for me. Well, she presented it to me because it was such a massive occasion. Barry scoring a try against the All Blacks in, when was it, Barry? 2008, was it?
76. The worst thing about that painting, Trim, is he used to have it the opposite side of the door, and he used to have a picture of the painting beside the door, beside the painting.
I thought you were going to say he used to have it facing the wall. So, Mick, is that one of your proudest moments of your son there?
Yeah, it is, because we go back a long time with the Kiwis. I mean, it was a massive occasion here in '78 when the All Blacks were beaten by Munster. But in '76, I went on a tour to New Zealand. I was only 21, and
did the All Blacks beat Munster? She said, "Don't remember hearing
the All Blacks."
So,
I caught that up. Sorry.
No, the All Blacks beat Munster. Like the All Blacks drew with Munster in Cork in '73, 3-3. They were. I think this is in my lifetime, right? In the late '60s, they beat Munster down in Musgrave Park again, 4-3, and then in '78 they came. I mean, they played Munster, I think, 3 times in 10 years, and but in '76 we went on a tour. It was a supporters tour, and it was the first time Ireland had ever toured New Zealand, so it was a massive occasion, and we flew out to New Zealand, 21 Irish young lads from all over the country. They were from Dublin, Cork, Limerick, and it was a trip of a lifetime. And so, as you know, the Kiwis, when they get to know you, they never forget you. They never forget your phone number, your address. So for years, we had Kiwis coming to our house when the kids were small. They were thrown out of the beds for a lot of Kiwis. And of course, they had to listen to me about Munster beating the All Blacks in '78. And, it's just a massive occasion in Limerick and in Munster, that match. Of course, there was, say, 15,000 people at the match. But if you talk to everybody in Munster, they were all at the match. So there was 100,000 people, Yeah. But then, of course, when 30 years later, Munster were celebrating the opening of Thomond Park, and the All Blacks were playing Munster, and Barry got picked. And after 1 minute, Barry got concussed in the match. And I said, oh no, with Barry and all his injuries over the years, this was another one. And I put my hands in my head, and I said, oh Lord, he's going to have to come off. But he stayed on. The lads brought him back. He was very badly concussed. And he'll tell you himself, he doesn't remember scoring the try. He doesn't remember the match. But it was a massive. And when he scored the try, my phone started hopping from New Zealand, because everyone in New Zealand that I knew were watching it. And they said, oh, we've been listening to you for 30 years about Munster beating the All Blacks. Now we have to listen to your son has scored a try against the All Blacks. So, but, he holds the unique distinction that the All Blacks had only one try scored against them in that tour. And Barry was the one to score it. Although Stringer made the try, and then Tupaki planned the tactics, but Barry had to catch the ball and go over the line. And I'm sure he was damn nervous when that ball was passed him, But anyway.
Imagine I dropped it. Imagine I dropped that ball.
Oh, Jesus.
Sliding doors, Trimble.
Yeah, so you really should have a picture of Stringer and Tupaki then up behind you as well.
Yeah, Tupaki was, if he had stayed on the field that night, I think we could have beaten him. I mean, and I think Leamy was a big loss when he came off in that game. But Stringer, I mean, he took some hit to release that ball. But anyway, there were incredible memories. And then, just at the end of it, when we went into Thomond Park, into the hospitality, Barry came in, and I had told him before the match, if he could swap the jersey and get me an All Blacks jersey, I could die happy, because I had so many Kiwi friends. I said, oh God, if I could get my hands. So Barry came in with his Munster jersey all rolled up in a ball in his hand, and I went over to him, and I knew he wasn't looking great because of the bang he got. And I said, what are you doing with the jersey? He said, the bastards wouldn't swap with me. And I said, what did they say? And they said, you realize how hard I had to work for this jersey? And I said to them, what did you say? He said, well, I told him the same thing. I had to work damn hard for this one, but you have to swap. And when I look back on the match, if you see all the All Blacks coming out in the second half, they were all pulling their jerseys down. They'd put on the second jersey to make it authentic, if you know what I mean. They had a second jersey to swap, but they wore it to make it authentic. And when he went in to swap the jersey, they wouldn't swap it. They had two. So I took a poor view of that, really. I just felt that they didn't show the respect to Munster, and Munster deserved. So
I think, Trimby, do you know the way we're planning our trip to New Zealand, to South Africa next year for the Lions?
All of them.
All of them, right? we should plan our next trip to New Zealand, and it'll be like the bring back the jersey trip. So we go down there and we kept my jersey.
Yeah, I
think it was Jose Gear I was marking, but I'd prefer Rococo's jersey if that was all right. So let's go find Rococo and see if he still has that jersey.
I got Rococo's jersey.
Have you?
Will you give me yours?
I give it away. I give it to a mate of mine.
Jesus.
Who's a mat, and he loves his rugby. He would love it. He's like Pat. He's the Pat in my life. Just loves his rugby. So he really burst into tears whenever I got him the Rugby Cuckoo jersey.
Yeah.
But Mick, listen. So I'm sure that's a lovely story. I'm sure it's a very, very proud, special moment for you watching Barry score that try with all the history and the connections with New Zealand. But listen, we've got a couple of things we need to settle. You need to put a couple of things straight. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm on here today, is because my parenting has been called into question.
Go on, get it off your chest. Correct the wrongs.
Well, the sex tapes.
Tapes.
Yeah, tapes. Sorry. For those who mightn't have seen the podcast, there was a video confiscated from Brian, and it was the older brother, and it was Terry gave it to me, and she said, "Look what I found under their mattress, under Brian's mattress, or whatever." You see, so it was a blue movie.
Domination by JC Lane.
I only looked at it once. It was harmless, really, you know. But anyway, I was accused of taking it. My wife put it into Terry. She put it into my sock drawer. So I asked Brian yesterday, my eldest son, I said, "Tell me the story about the videotape, because I've been accused of taking it out occasionally and watching it." And he said that our next door neighbours, I won't mention him, you know him well, Bright, child, went to America on his holidays and brought this back.
I've already mentioned them earlier on, so
But anyway, Brian got a hold of the tape and he was caught, and Terry put it into my sock drawer, and I don't remember anything after that, but seemingly it was sitting in my sock drawer, and every time you were robbing my socks, Brian said, we went in and we took the tape out and we put it in, and I was watching it on the QT, and then you go in and rob a pair of socks, you'd take it out and you'd watch it, and then every time you watch it, the tape was on a different scene. So ye all thought I was
the storyline was messed up. Storyline was I thought it was you and Terry.
I was accused. Yeah, you me and Terry. No, just wanted to put that straight. Okay, no.
Okay.
Then the next one, I was called a chancer a couple of weeks ago on one of your podcasts. For the people that didn't hear the story, I always consider myself a bit of an entrepreneur, not a chancer. You know, I prefer if you would have said. I just want to put that straight. That was about the time we were selling the T-shirts inside in the shop.
Mm-hmm. Counterfeit Munster gear.
Yeah, I was in. I was in the retail. So we had a ladies' fashion store in Limerick for a number of years, and just when the Munster thing took off, there was no paraphernalia. There was no T-shirts or no scarves, and people were going to Thomond Park and they were going away on these Heineken matches with all their Munster jerseys that they bought years ago. And there was fellas digging up red T-shirts and red jackets and whatever. So Munster hadn't got any paraphernalia to sell. So, and if they had, the Munster jersey was about €50 or €60. It was too expensive. So this guy, a guy from Dublin, Dave Noble, who would have been known as Max Scrum. He was an incredible Munster supporter, but the Leinster supporters didn't appreciate it. But he just fell in love with the Munster bandwagon and whatever. So he came to Limerick one day, and I knew him through rugby, and he was selling the merchandise. If you remember, he was selling it on the street, Heineken Cup days. He was out in Thomond Park. He went to Bordeaux. He went to Toulouse. He went all over Europe with Munster, selling his Max Scrum logo on T-shirts, hats, scarves, and whatever. But he was just great crack, a great friend to the Munster supporters. So he came into me one day and he said, "Mick," he said, "would you mind if I put my stuff out in your window?" I said, "Okay, Dave, sure, no problem." And it was the weekend of Cup match, and we sold loads of his stuff. So I decided then to get T-shirts and put my own logo on them. And of course, the Munster logo at the time wasn't patent, so we could use the 3 crowns. We could use it. So we started selling T-shirts. Then we got hats printed, and we got scarves. And it was kind of quiet time in the shop coming into the summer and whatever. And it was all kind of quarterfinals, semi-finals, and finals. So they used to pay for our trips. And I used to bring you and Brian and Daniel I remember bringing you to Bordeaux for the Toulouse match. And God, I mean, you remember that. And I mean, I remember holidays, but this was just incredible match. The lads, Munster were incredible that day, and coming home on the plane. And you remember the plane? I called a drink on the plane, and oh my God, it was bad. It was,
you kept getting your drink confiscated on the plane because you were drinking cans that you hadn't bought on the plane.
We weren't allowed to bring drink on the plane. Of course, when we went into the ground that day, it was all non-alcoholic beer. Of course, we didn't know, and when we got into the ground, we couldn't get out, so we had to spend the day drinking non-alcoholic beer in.
Disgraceful.
It was 30 degrees, like it was incredibly hot. But anyway, we went to the final in Northampton, in Northampton one in Twickenham, and my T-shirts and all the sales, they contributed towards the cost of our flights and whatever, you know. So it was all a bit of fun, but so they were my entrepreneurial skills.
You're a bootlegger. You're a bootlegger, Mick.
So
do you ever hear of Mattress Mick, Trimble?
Oh yeah.
He's a guy in Dublin who sells mattresses, and his name is Mattress Mick, and I just picture Mick as being Munster Mick, just selling his Munster jerseys with his face on the front of them.
Yeah, great stuff. So the the trips away, were they legitimate business expenses then?
No comment.
Okay. I've gone too far. Okay.
Yeah, well, the expenses didn't go through the company.
Okay, it's okay. It's all right.
It was just resting in my account.
What that?
What about then? So then the next step for Barry then career-wise was then he went on the tour that I was on to Argentina in 2007, and you joined him on that. Is that right?
Yeah,
did that come out of the same fund?
No, actually, we just closed. Actually, I think we closed our business that year. We retired. Terry and I retired. So
because Barry was your golden goose.
Yeah. Ching.
And it was
what a failure.
Yeah. What? No. We went to Argentina that year, and I think your parents were on that Trimble, weren't they? They were on
so
that
I believe,
trip. Yeah. So I believe.
So I'm told.
Yeah, that was a great trip. Barry got his first cap. I remember Eddie O'Sullivan was the coach, and Barry was warming up on the pitch for about 20 minutes, and it was coming to the final whistle, and I was, oh please, get him on. And I think you were winning the match then, Barry, right?
Yeah, we were winning. Thanks, Mick. Yeah.
No, you were. You remember?
We were, because Contepomi got a drop goal to win it.
Felipe.
Yeah.
You did, yeah. You were that much from blocking it down.
I know, yeah. I know, Mick. I know.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Jesus. But it was that was a great tour. We had a great crack with the a lot of the parents were there, and a lot of supporters, and it was great to see the country. And so you got 2 caps there. Then you got picked then for the second test, and that was in Buenos Aires. That was fantastic. Quite noisy, wasn't it, Barry? Yeah. Very.
Yeah, that was Crucible, wasn't it, Trimby? I remember the crowd just hanging off cages, spitting at us when we were coming out
through the cages.
Spitting through the cages. We were coming out out of the tunnel. I remember going, I really should be angry at this, but I was like, this is class.
Yeah. I mean, they had the riot police. They had about 5,000 riot police there. Like, there was only about, I'd say, 30,000 at the match, but Jesus, when we arrived at the stadium, we were saying, God Almighty, who's going to be fighting now? Because there was only about 30 of us, and So yeah, and they were all, after the match, the riot police, you could see they were disappointed, like that there wasn't a riot or whatever,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah,
great stuff, Mick. So a couple of very proud moments there, and then you're obviously you stayed very close to Barry and Dan, the rest of the guys in the band. Then you had a role there, a crucial role. I thought naively, I asked Mick if you have a background in sound engineer. I thought he was I thought he was more involved, and then humbly Mick told me he was the bus driver. You were like Ray Donovan, just the problem solver, were you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mick is the bus driver. He's the merchandise seller. He's the roadie. He gets us out of bed, unloads and loads the van, and all the above. But yeah, he's an integral part of the Hermitage Green team. Most importantly, getting us out of bed, I think.
Yeah, they I'm now called Merchandise Mick.
More counterfeit Hermitage Green gear now these days than the Munster stuff.
Counterfeit Mick, I think it is.
They promised they'd pay me this year, but now the pandemic is in, so I have to wait another year. So I'm 10 years waiting to get paid, so I just can't. I have it all. I have an account of it all anyway, how much they owe me. But when they get that big hit, they're going to get a bill.
Yeah.
No, when I reached the ripe old age of 60, the lads were starting to tour, and they asked me to go to New York with them, and that was my first tour, and it was talk about flying by the seat of your pants. It was a great experience. It was a great way to see New York. I mean, I had been there before, but you just kind of went to the touristy spots. But when you go to the music, where the music goes on in New York, down on the Bowery Street, and where you hear all the stories where Bruce Springsteen jammed and Jimi Hendrix, and like there's just venues down there that are there's hundreds of them. And when all the big music stars come into New York for a weekend or a night or whatever, they go down to these places and just jam with maybe 50 or 100 people in these venues. So it was incredible. And you remember we went up to, of course, where we stayed. Barry rang me. He said, "Dad, we're going to New York. Would you like to come?" Love to. Would you know somewhere where we could get a reasonable place to stay in? So I said, "Okay, leave it with me." I rang a friend of mine. He got me a hotel. He rang me. He said, "Mick, I have a hotel, $38 a night, but 3 in a room. Do you mind?" So there was only 6 of us going. We didn't bring any sound engineers or anything with us. We got them all over there, and so there was 6 of us. So 3 in a room. So I rang Barry. Said, "Barry, what do you think?" He said, No, that's too dear." I said, "Barry, where are you going to get something like in New York, down the Bowery? This is right in where the venues are and whatever." He says, "I will find somewhere." So he rings me back. He said, "Dad, I got somewhere. You have your own room and everything." "Gee, I have my own room. How did you get that cheaper?" And he says, "Oh, look, we found it on internet or whatever, you see." So we arrive into New York, and we get picked up, brought to the Bowery Street, and we arrive, and there's the paparazzi are outside where we were staying. And I said, "Jesus, lads, the paparazzi are here. God, this is fantastic. I don't think it's for us, Dad." I said, "Well, what are they doing here?" I said, "I'd say it's that hotel across the road." So there was this 5-star hotel, the Bowery Hotel, I think was the name of it. And all the film stars, all the big stars that come to New York stay there. So these paparazzi are there 24/7 outside, but they're across the road. Long lenses, the whole lot. So we get out, and I said, "Where are we staying?" "Oh, sorry, lads, I left this on." So anyway,
Unprofessional.
yeah, unprofessional. So make a long story short, anyway, it was I looked up, and it was a hostel, and
Didn't even have a sign above the door, Trimble. It was that bad.
No,
Oh, the
Chinese took it over, but it was a homeless shelter back in the day, the 60s and the 70s, and the Chinese bought it and turned it into a hostel. But all they did was just give it a lick of paint. So there was 3 floors. There was 300 bedrooms in the hostel, and they were all single. And lucky enough, it was in the month of May, so it wasn't that full because there was one toilet and shower at the end of each corridor of the 3 corridors. So there was one shower there for at least 100 people. So and you went to bed late and you got up early. That was the way I worked it. I went to bed at about 4 o'clock in the morning and I got up at 7. So I wouldn't have to sleep in there for too long.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we all got bed bugs and shit. It was ridiculous.
You did, I didn't.
Travel in style, Mick. That's
but
the
anyway,
way we do it.
We went up to, where did we go after that then? We went up to
into the Catskills in New York.
Catskills, yeah. And that's called the 33rd county of Ireland. And it's where all the Irish went over in the 60s and 70s. And they were still the same. They were still dressed in the same jumpers that they went over in. And we played in the festival there. It was mind-boggling.
Very, very glamorous Trimble.
Yeah, nothing says rock and roll like bed bugs.
Well, bed bugs and people from Ireland in the 70s still wearing the same clothes 30 years later.
I've been around with them. I've been all over Ireland and all over England, Wales. I've been, where else did I go, Barry? I went to Singapore, Dubai. So it's been... you haven't been a good ad for the rock and roll business, Barry. I mean, you're very quiet. Like they're in bed every night. You're tame, yeah. They get drunk very fast. So anyway,
you missed the early years, and we were proper rock and roll. But that's why we only brought you in to kind of calm us down.
Yeah, I have to get them to bed, Trimby, straight after the gig, because if I don't, you get up in the morning and there's about 2 of them missing. And then you have to spend the day going around driving. Their phones are dead. So you spend the day driving around. Well, we saw him here at about 2 o'clock. And then he was with this fella. And they get invited back to these house parties and whatever. And, oh, Jesus. I remember just in Kilkenny. Do you remember the time in Kilkenny? You were playing in Kilkenny and years ago, and you were all invited back to a house party. And we got up the next morning, and you were on half of you were missing. It took us a day to find you.
Yeah.
So you can delete that one if you want to now. I don't mind.
No, keep it in there. It makes us look cool.
Oh yes, one story, Trimby. We went to Belfast, and we had a gig in, I think it was in the Limelight. And in there, of course, I was in charge of parking the van and making sure. See, you've different up in Belfast. You have to. I think you've got parking meters or whatever. So anyway, we Jerry Kelly, the BBC Northern Ireland guy. He'd invited the lads in for just to play a song, and his program. I think he was out between 2 and 4 on say Friday afternoon. So the lads went into the Ulster Hall. He was doing it in the Ulster Hall. And when the lads went in, there was an audience there of about 500 active retirement people. And Jerry was doing the program for them. And then he says, okay, folks, he said, we have a band all the way up from Limerick here, and they're playing in the Limelight tonight. And they just came in here today to play a tune for you. Please put your hands together. You see, so the lads got up on the stage and played the tune. And of course, during those times, I walk around and I meet people and I talk to people and listen to the lads and whatever. And I took it all in because the Ulster Hall it's a magnificent building. And but anyway, after the gig, the lads came in and we went down, did the sound check in the Limelight, and next thing the band come out and Barry's talking up the stage, and I noticed down the back of the hall there's about 25 people there that I knew from the active retirement party. And when they heard that the lads were playing Limelight, they decided to go and buy tickets and went. And they were at the gig, but they were all down at the back, of course, where all the seating was. And Barry comes up on the stage and he shouts out, well, I'm delighted to be here in Belfast and great to play in front of a crowd of young people. And today we played in front of a crowd of geriatrics from an active retirement party. And I'm down the back sitting with them and I'm going, oh, Jesus. And I had to
Jesus.
apologise for him anyway, you know. And I went into the dressing room afterwards, and I said, "Barry, you know the active retirement crew? There was about 25 of them down the back. They all want to meet you."
He'd let you down. He'd let you down, Mick.
Yeah,
I did a
I'm
lot.
sure, Mick. There's plenty more occasions when he's made you proud than that one occasion when he let you down. But listen, that's great stuff, Mick. Great insight. Some highlights from rugby. One or two vague memories of him growing up, and then a couple of highlights from playing in the band and looking after him. Mick, thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming on. You better get back and rearrange all the pictures on the wall before Terry gets home.
Yeah.
Okay, lads. Thanks very much, and
Nice
Thanks,
one, Mick.
Mick.
Enjoy
See
your
you
summer.
later.
Enjoy your summer, Andrew.
Okay, we've got Keith Earls here. Keith Earls obviously was a Lion, seasoned Irish international, won a couple of European Cups with Munster, but more importantly, he was a founding member of Hermitage Green. Not a lot of people know that about you.
Yeah,
This is a fact.
I'm an original member. Baz took me under his wing. I suppose we done a bit of a jam session in his house a couple of years back. I was learning how to play the guitar. Baz was trying to teach me, and I'm still learning to play. 10 years later.
Wow.
So
I
claim
completely forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's my claim to fame now. When Hermitage Green are releasing great songs, I was like, I used to be in that band. Myself and Felix Jones used to be in that band.
So you're not getting any of the royalties that you should be getting.
No, it's just something I've been thinking about now in lockdown. So I might start sending the lads a bit of invoice,
I'm not getting any of the royalties either, lads. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I remember it, man. It was upstairs in this room, and there was a couch in there. And now I must say, I think Dowling might have been in the band as well. So that will just show you how bad we were.
No, I think he was just a groupie. I think maybe.
We'd all just use Dowling.
Yeah, he's playing the triangle in the corner.
Yeah, I've never seen a human being with such less rhythm than Ian Dowling, like trying to clap, and it was like astounding that he couldn't clap in time.
Yeah, so it was a good jam session.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it, right? So that was I remember you saying to me before, whenever you came into the squad at the start, Dowling and Barry kind of took you under their wing a little bit. Was that part of that process? Come over here, we'll look after you, show you the ropes.
Yeah, it was. I think Baz was on that tour in 2007. I think Baz, you in Argentina.
Yeah.
2007, yeah, because that was my first pre-season as a academy player. I remember Dowles was there, and then obviously when you came back from tour, back training, I remember at the time as well I was training to be an electrician. So I was an electrician for 3 months. So I'd been used to being on the building sites at 8 a.m, going out to my car, eating my lunch and falling asleep and having to go until 4 o'clock. And I was trying to play in Munster under 20s at the time, and I think Declan Kidley eventually said, right, you're getting burnt out, there's a development contract for you. And I remember my first day as a professional rugby player was we had weights and speed. Then myself, Baz and Dowles, and I think Kieran Boyle was there in Mossy. We went up to the sports bar in Newell and started playing darts at like 10:30 in the morning. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But it was like Dowles and Baz, being around on the backs, and obviously Mossy Lawler would have had a big influence as well and took me under his wing, buying me Goujon rolls when we were heading to Cork training. Chicken Goujon rolls.
So so obviously Barry had just come back from Argentina, got a couple of caps over there, and you were coming through, kind of fancied your chances and fancied his jersey. I imagine, like, whenever you got close to him, he brought you under his wing. I'd imagine you were eyeing him up, almost like a snake eyes up his victim.
Yeah, I remember, like, it's that old saying, like, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Baz had an incredible season. The season before that, 2006, and obviously injuries halted it. But a lot of people going about the Sale game, the same Sale Troy. incredible try, but I think some of his group stage performance as well. I think it was Cast Baz. I think was it who absolutely ripped it up. But then the sale game. Then I remember the papers that week. The Limerick leader was like, "Oh, a star is born," and then I was like, back in my head, I was so jealous. And I was like, I was like in my own head, I was like, oh, I hope he enjoys it while he can. And then I got in and I met Baz and he was sound to me and I was like, oh my God, I'll take all that back.
So I'm gonna take this fella's place. It wasn't long after that I moved to the Wingers. To be honest with you.
Yeah, but I remember my first season coming in. I was like, obviously I was playing 13. You were 13, and I was like, this class now. I'll shift him out of his place, but I think Dunbar just threw me to full back, and you were playing centre. So yeah, it worked out well for us.
So there was plenty of competition early. There was Maths, then Tapuki arrived then. The
boys didn't help. Like, you know, I think Maths and Baz when they played in the centre together, it was you know, Munster had great centre partners, but I think between the two of them, it was special. Two of them. Like, I think Baz was nearly like, he's one of the first rugby players from Limerick to have that X factor. Like, you know, obviously Mossy was there as well, and Mossy played in massive games for Munster, but Baz just had that ability to turn the game upside down and create something from nothing, and I suppose got us young lads excited as well, knowing that he was just a Limerick sham as well from across the bridge, and you know, he was leading the way for us.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you for that, man. That's class to hear you say that. And it was the competition. I think at that point was so good in Limerick, especially the gym sessions. You talk about the speed sessions and stuff we had. Like, I don't know what it's like for you now, but back then it was like the level of competition on a Monday morning when we go in and be doing power weights between myself, yourself, Dowling, Paul Warwick, Kieran O'Boyle, Kieran Lewis, and we all were chewing at the bit to see who could knock milliseconds off our 30 meters and our CMJs and our counter movement jumps across the mats. And like with Paul Derbyshire's, you remember, like as the kind of heading up that S&C side of things for that Munster team in 08, 09, especially, he set the tone. He was just so tough and straight, and we knew exactly what we had to do. Then Tom Cummins, who had a PhD in rugby strength and conditioning, and we just trusted him with everything. Joe Gallina was also S&C, and it was just, I've never felt so primed as a team, and the competition. And you could, as you said, we put you in full back. Remember that Dragons game? You in full back when you scored a hat trick against Dragons. Maths is 12. I think I was 13, and you could slot any of us to any position on that team, I think, and that was the beauty of what was going on back then. That there was an understanding between us, and it was so exciting to play in that team.
Yeah, it was brilliant, and I think I was quite blessed as well as a young lad coming through, having to play with that quality. And I suppose you talk about the gym sessions there. I was quite blessed as well. You know, I remember Sunday nights used to be like a feeling before a game, the nerves getting ready for that gym session on a Monday. Like trying to beat, like you throw Champagne in there as well, who's a freak at lifting weights, and then a couple of years later, Felix comes down and he's doing what he does. He's an unbelievable competitor.
The bar goes up. The bar goes up again when Felix comes down.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was every day. Like, you knew every day after training, like you had to be at your very best. Like, you know. And
I remember. Sorry, go on.
No. I think what stood to me, I think I was quite blessed. I'd worked with Tom Cummins while I was in school. Like, as you said there, Tom has a PhD. Unbelievably intelligent fella, and I used to work with him before school, so I kind of had 2 years working with him. I think I was part of some of his assignments for college even, so I got a 2-year head start in me. So
the snake again.
The snake again, yeah, exactly. So look, yeah, Tom was incredible. We were quite blessed. Well, I think I was quite blessed to get him at 16, 17, you know.
Absolutely. And I think when you came in, there was that level. I was talking to Trimby about it last week when he was in school. There was talks of Trimby coming out of school, and it was like, he's going to be the next big thing. And we certainly had that in Munster when yourself and Connor came out of Munchins. There was that level of excitement about the 2E as well. And you know, it's very rare that happens. So obviously a lot down to Tom Cummins and the coaches in Munchins, but you came in, I remember you being quite serious, and I was like, right, he's a serious fella. And then I remember playing darts and getting a bit of crack. And then I think maybe your first game, was at Ospreys, and we travelled together, and we were in the airport, and we were sitting next to each other, and you said, how many packs of chewing gum do you think I could get in my mouth at once? And I was like, brilliant. 5, all right. So he goes up and buys 5 packs of Hubba Bubba and try to put in his mouth.
I remember he violently ill on the airplane as well. Yeah, I was
a snooker ball of chewing gum in your mouth.
Yeah, I was being all serious, and obviously because it's something I wanted to do. Geez, most of my childhood was play for Munster, but then when I came into the environment and I seen the crack the lads were having, so I was like, right, time to leave my guard down here a small bit and try and do something funny, see will the lads like me.
You might have thought, Earls, you might have thought whenever you come into the environment, you know, there was all these rock stars, you know, the O'Connells, the O'Garas, whatever, all those guys, and you might have thought Barry was, you know, an access point into that, you know, a kind of friendly face to kind of get you started.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the great thing about Baz. I think he just gets on with everyone. Like, you know, there isn't, like, you could have a conversation with anyone about anything and he'd hold the conversation easily, and he can get on with all sorts of personalities. And, you know, for him to be, like, he was a rock star when I was coming in, and obviously Paulie and them, but, you know, the way it was with Rog, unless you were capped at 21, he didn't want to talk to you. So I'm only messing. I'm not really. So yeah, Baz and Dowles were quite sound. They were like just lads, and as I said, they're mossy as well. They're just normal boys.
Yeah.
Like,
look, it was, I think one of the biggest regrets for me finishing up at 28, Trimby, was I'd played a couple of times in the centre, only twice early in the centre with you. I think you played 12 and I played 13. And one of the matches I got man of the match. The second one I wasn't far off it. And I reckon it was down to how much space you were creating and how much of an understanding we had. Because I've always felt that was the most important thing for a 12-13 combination, was to really understand the person you were playing with, and being a Limerick young fella and kind of knowing what you were about, and both their fathers been steeped in Munster rugby, and I just immediately felt a connection with you coming out of Munchins as well. And I loved obviously playing at any position on the field with you, but fuck, I loved when we played in the centre. I know maybe you weren't, you didn't have your eyes set on being a 12, but do you have any memories of those games?
yeah, I mean, we played against, was it Connacht, I think was my first game at Town Park as a 12. I don't think, maybe once in school I played 12, but obviously when you step up to that level, and I remember couldn't figure out how to defend at 12. It was so hard. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, because I remember it was at Maths. Maths used to play 30 games a season, whatever, and I think Dumper or whoever wanted to give him a break, so I ended up playing 12, and then I was trying to be like Maths, and I was trying to throw all these crazy offloads. But
that's when you were quite bulky back then as well.
Yeah, I was like, I remember coming in after an off season, and Paulie and Hayes were standing in the gym, and they were like, Jesus Christ, you in the taxi with your father for the summer working away. I came back like 98 kg, unbelievably fat. But yeah, no, it was enjoyable, and I think that's why my first season, whatever, my first couple of games playing full back, and with you at 13, the amount of space I suppose we created for each other. As I said, I don't even think you knew what way you were going with I used to love that about Hayes, and he used to call you Bambi. Your legs used to be all over the place and just creating space, and, you know, I think we did complement each other in that way.
You said his arms or his hands had a mind of their own.
Yeah,
that's socially though. That's off the pitch, is it?
No, it was both. It was off the field and it was on the field. So when he was running on the field, the ball would be up around here, and he'd be confused, and I was playing with him and confusing ourselves. And then when we were out socially and having a few pints, you look out over at Baz, and you can see as the night goes on, the hand just starts to come up, and you just see Baz standing in the corner like that, just drinking, and it just. So yeah, his hands used to have a mind of their own.
Well, look, those nights after 2008 Heineken Cup final, like, they were some of the best nights I've ever had in my life, weren't they? And what I loved about you is, like, when you walked in the door, Adele, your wife, came with you, like, as a young fella, like, and she took over as much as you did.
Well, like I was only 20. Like, I know Trimble said there at the start of a few, like, I don't consider myself having a Heineken Cup, you know, and I remember I was on the bench for the final and never got on, so I didn't actually play a minute of Europe, but I remember, like, it was purely like the best seat in the house as a supporter. Like, I was on the bench, I got to live it.
I'd be over with the girls in the corner, lads, just burning the ear off all the wives. Yeah, it was a terrible for that.
Would that have been, Earlsy, with many of the boys, obviously, whenever things went south for you, was there a conversation, by the way? Did the lads in Hermitage Green have to say, listen, I think we're going to have to get someone, a proper guitarist in here? But after you left the band, then did you become a big fan? And would a lot of the lads gone along to the early gigs and supported the boys?
Yeah. Like, obviously, like, because it was my first time ever coming across music or someone who could play an instrument. I think the only one was my grandfather playing the guitar or the banjo, and that was about it. But I genuinely couldn't get over the talent, and I was so surprised how, I suppose, Baz being such a good rugby player, how he was such a good singer as well. I was like,
it's annoying,
this fella's pissing me off. Like, yeah. So the couple of early gigs, like, you know, they obviously played in the Corrigal and Limerick. You know, I don't even think they were getting paid. You just go over and jam, and then people, you know, start figuring out that they were over there, and, you know, we can over supporting the lads. I think you played in Adair a few times, Baz, small little pubs maybe, and just gone out and sitting there. Then obviously Dolan's came along, and they started growing, and it was brilliant. You know, they started kicking off, and into a few other gigs in Kilkee as well, having a couple of date nights, listening to the boys. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's been great to get that support from the lads, to be fair. Like, you've always used it as a night out, or we've even played a few end of season gigs for the boys, which was unbelievable. And then Adele sending me videos yesterday of the girls dancing and singing our latest song. It was pretty class as well.
Yeah, they're obsessed. I cut the grass last week for an hour, and I just had it on repeat. The grass, whatever. It's I think it's definitely caught on in this house. LMA Laurie absolutely blasting it out. So yeah, it's definitely my favorite song of yours. So fair play.
Legend. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Nice one, Earlsy. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on and taking a trip down memory lane. A few good memories there, and we'll let you get on. You're away for the day, are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna head down to the mobile home blown Kilkee. We've day off tomorrow, so get down with the girls.
How's it going? How's it been getting back? Enjoying it?
Yeah, it's been good. You know, getting back seeing the lads, there's nothing better than having the crack with the boys. You know, I was getting a bit stale going out to the shed and training on my own, talking to myself, but it's good to get back, getting abuse and giving abuse, and hopefully it'll last, and hopefully we can start getting back together in big groups, and hopefully games go ahead in August. You know, it's as if the public can listen to the specialists.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice one,
Earlsy. Thanks a million, so man.
Cheers, lads.
Okay, Earlsy, thanks a lot for coming on. Cheers. We'll catch you again. Barry, does that make you feel all warm and fuzzy as a man who loves nostalgia? Took a trip down memory lane how do you reflect upon that?
It does, and to have someone I feel almost like Jesus. People have been listening to this, going, "With Keith Earls on the show, and we don't get to listen to him talk about his own career, which has obviously been incredible. But so it's very humbling to have a guy like Earlsy come on and talk about me. But yeah, it does. I loved, as obviously we talked about before, when getting into that Munster setup and the struggle I had and the lack of confidence that I had, and as I said, it was so daunting, and I found it so hard. But then once I started realizing how lucky I was, and how how amazing it was that I was amongst the best players in the country and some of the best players in the world, and I was learning so much. It was just a roller coaster. And with all the injuries I had, I suppose it got pretty difficult. And looking back, for 9 years I was there. I don't think I'd gone 3 months without a pretty substantial injury, which is fuck. You take like when you're in the middle of it, as you know yourself, you don't really dwell on it too much, and the support you get from the players and the medical staff and all that is so incredible that you kind of look after. But mentally, psychologically, what you have to go through as a player, going through all that is fuck. It's so hard. So when I think back, there is like bit of a it's a bit of a dark period, as well as having so many highs, and then to go out at 28 with a career-ending injury, when I think I was slow to develop a lot of times, especially physically and psychologically with my confidence. So by the time I'd reached 27, I felt like I was really coming into my own, and I was finally making an impact, just not on the field, but off the field within Munster. I was like, this, I'm here now. I'm here to kind of put my stamp on it, and I really felt like more of a senior player. And it was, what a buzz to be involved in that. As I said earlier on, working with the likes of O'Connell and Raj, and again, Axel for me was so integral in that part. And I even like to take a minute to just talk about that, because I've never talked about it before, and what he meant to me. And losing Axel a few years ago, and I've never really experienced anything like that, and it was so heartbreaking. And the only way I can describe it is Axel. I've thought about him so much, and I've thought about what he meant to me in that development part of my life. And do you never meet someone who he made me think about how every person has a unique relationship with another person. No one has the same relationship, so we're all a bit different. And the more open you are, I think, the more chance you are of having really genuine relationships. And I always felt like he was open to me, as much as he didn't say much or anything. But I just felt like I had such a unique relationship with him, that when I walk into a room or walk into a cafe and I'd meet him, he'd give me a little smile that was enough to say, like, this fella loves me, like, and he loves having me around. And that was all. Like, I mean, the last time I met him, like, we used to play soccer on Monday nights. When I'd retired, I was 3 years into retirement, and I found that really hard. That processing the fact that I was still only 29, 30 and retiring, and not knowing what I was doing with my life. And Axel brought me out to Killaloo to play soccer with him and his mates, and Woody and Marcus and Dowling. And it was Monday nights. It was the best part of my week. We'd go out and play five-a-side, and it was just so nice to be a part of something. And then on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, I'd go into UL and I'd train, and then I'd go up to the cafe that Earlsy's talking about, and Axel could be sitting there and having his coffee, and he was obviously going through a tough time with Munster and coaching, and we just have a moment to sit down and have a bit of breakfast, and all we talk about was playing soccer on the Monday night. And he'd be under these weird delusions that he was class at soccer, even though he was absolutely useless. But the last time I met him on that Tuesday, we were chatting away, and he just got up and he walked. I thought he was going over to get a cup of coffee, but he just walked out the door without saying goodbye or anything. Like, it was just so Axel and so perfect. So yeah, when I look back, he's always the first person that almost pops into my head. And and then Olive and the kids, and his parents and his sisters. So yeah, I think when thinking back in my career, I owe so much to what he did with the likes of Golov and Claw and Raj and Strings and how they built that Munsters team and that I was so fortunate to be allowed play with them and yeah, so that for me is the best part of looking back on my career is those guys and yeah, feel very lucky.
Yeah, he epitomized that whole generation, didn't he? And then they collectively that he led that. They collectively created something, and then they handed that down to you and to Earlsy and the rest of the guys, and you're all kind of living off that and enjoying that and contributing to that as well. So I'm sure it was a very special time, and I'm sure you look back with incredible memories.
Yeah, it's the dream. It's again, I go back to that. As a kid, that's all I would dream about. I could see Thomond Park from my bedroom, and I used to go out on the road or go up to Munchins, and I, practice on my own, uh, running with the ball in two hands, and having thinking about those moments where you like I feel like the Sale match that when I scored that try, and I hate harping on it because I didn't have huge moments in my career, but or a lot, but I had a couple, and I feel like I had actually dreamt about that happening, and I don't mean like dreaming in bed asleep. I mean like sitting and thinking about something and going, man, wouldn't that be class if you got the ball and you make a little break and you um and doing it for Munster at the top level. It's so powerful to have those dreams as a young fella. And I think if I was to talk to any kids or my own kids, like that's the most important thing is to have that dream and make it real and make it attainable and believe in yourself and don't let anyone, because you'll find the people that will knock you along the way, and that was always the hardest part for me, and it almost stopped me developing and becoming um you know uh a professional rugby player or whatever. But thankfully I had enough people around me to show me support as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. So
You're emotional.
yeah, I'm sure. So after that, then you talked about that kind of transition period where you were sort of finding your feet and then finding a little bit of identity, yes, in five-a-side football, but also kind of more long term in the band and starting the band. And was there was that a tough period, that transition? And then when was the moment or whenever you thought, you know what, I think something's gonna happen here and this is actually something to be really excited about?
um it came pretty quick. Again, as I said, it was one of the when I was a kid, it was all I wanted to be was play sport or music, and um, just like sport, music got a few things. The music got in the way, where it was you know going to teachers who would teach you classical music when all I wanted to do was fucking play um, pop music and stuff like that, and so it was always framed with a little bit of I don't know, something I didn't like about it. But when we started the band, it was something to do on a Monday night or Sunday night when I was playing, and it was a distraction, and it was just me and my mates in the corner of a pub playing tunes, and it was so nice to have that outlet. And I felt day one there was something special. And my brother is an incredibly talented fella, and I was always believed in him becoming. I thought he was always destined to become something special in music. But for me, I'd never really imagined it. So I was very much riding their coattails for the first few years. Musically, they're so far ahead of me that I was what I was bringing to the table was I could sing, but I was so far behind music and musically, and that was so daunting for me. Like when the rugby career ended so abruptly, then it was like, well, okay, what do I do next? I've got nothing really academically to fall back, and I've no other um anything else I'm really good at but the music on a Monday, Tuesday night. And as Earlsy said, we were just paying for pints and paying for maybe 50 quid here and there. But I I just felt that there was something special happening, and people started coming to see us, and we put up a few videos online, and it got traction straight away, and that was it. I was done. That was me for the rest of my life. I knew that I had, like the rugby, I had four mates that I totally trusted, and I knew they were going to be my friends for life and teammates. And I was like, this is us. We can, what I loved about it was making music that was moving people, and people were genuinely drawn to what we were saying or what we were playing. And that's so I was just so mind blown to me. I'd never imagined ever writing anything. I'm not a writer, but yet I was trying to write stuff that people were listening to, and it's still, it doesn't. The hilarity of the whole thing doesn't go beyond me either. Like I'm like sort of trying to write these sometimes bullshit lyrics that I'd be trying to put together, and I'm so cynical that I'd be kind of laughing at myself. But then all of a sudden, you write something that's genuine, and it's all about that. It's all about writing something that's genuine and comes from the right place. And then when you hear Keith Earls saying he's listened to it for an hour over and over, it's like that's fucking mental. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure. So it's one thing feeling like a Munster supporter is really identifying with, that brand Munster and that excitement at the time, and you getting the ball and then, feeling like they're a part of that. There's a real connection. But that's even stronger whenever you're talking about people coming to your gigs because they love their music, because they really identify with the songs that you've written. There must be something incredibly powerful and satisfying about that.
yeah, it's yeah, it's hard to. I can't never too far away from finding the hilarity in it. Like I'll be on stage and we could be on a big stage and I'll just be laughing to myself, looking at people who are getting so into it emotionally, and you're just like, this is mental. And Garth Brooks has a documentary out at the moment, and it's so cringy how kind of into it he is, and how much he wears his heart in his sleeve, but it's real as much as it looks so cringy, and you'd be like, Jesus, it's real. And when I'm on stage, sometimes you have those moments to yourself where like, this is fucking mad. That it's just someone up on a stage. I'm in a big metal stage in the middle of a field up in Portlaoise, but it's Electric Picnic, and you're in front of 20,000 people or whatever, and you're playing, and it's incredible when you have that moment when you look across. And I have this thing with Dara, our drummer, who the two of us lived above each other and below each other in an apartment in Anacati and near UL, and that's when the band started. I saw him one day going out with a drum, and I had a guitar, and I was like, do you want to maybe play a few tunes someday? And we started playing like in his kitchen. I played a Jack Johnson song and he'd drum along, and then all of a sudden you're on a big massive stage, Electric Picnic, and I'll just look over and he'll be looking at me with this funny look in his face, and I know he's thinking the exact same thing that I'm thinking, which is like, what the fuck are we doing here when we were just going to play in the kitchen, So that again is the magic of having a dream and sticking by it.
So in those early days, then, one of you're talking about the people who came along to listen to your music, and they were just getting so into it and just swept along. Was one of those Orla then? Was she one of those pothole groupies, or was she?
Orla was the original groupie. Yeah, she used to come to the pub gigs when you didn't actually have to make it look like you were coming for the gig. You could sit in the corner and think like you could make it look like you were just having a pint. And
She thought she was there for a pub quiz.
yeah. And there's like, oh, the band. But I spotted her early doors and got chatting to her, and she was moving to America for a year actually to work in fashion. But we started going out, and she'd actually been nominated for the Rose of Tralee. Her friend of hers was on the Rose of Tralee in Limerick and on the committee, and wanted Orla to go into it. And she's like, I always call her the anti-Rose, because she'd be like smoking weed and drinking pints and a couple of tattoos and loads of earrings and stuff. But she was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go for the crack. And I remember Raj was on the panel to vote for the Rose of Tralee or whatever, the judges. He was one of the judges on the Rose of Tralee, and he came up to me and he was like, do you have some bird that you're scoring in the Rose of Tralee? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, do you want me to make her win it? He said to me, do you want me to make her win it? I was like, I don't know, man. Probably not. I'd say she could win it on her own bat, maybe. She did not actually, but I like to think of how much power Raj would have had in that. So yeah, she had me early doors, and she moved to New York for a year, and then she came home and set up shop here, and the rest is history. We got married, and then the babies, and now fuck, where do we go from here?
Oh, it's
More
chaos.
babies.
Now no more crack, no more babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to imagine that she told you she was expecting the twins at a gig, and it was with the sign, Barry, I'm pregnant. And you're like,
And
oh wow, what amazing
and
news.
it's-
And then she turns the sign round and it says with twins. No.
Is it mine? Are they mine?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. So
yeah.
listen, we've gone deep and we've gone wide.
have gone deep.
And we've really got the grips with you, Barry. I think it's pretty clear from chatting to everyone, and in my experience anyway, you're one of life's good guys. You're extremely talented in a number of different ways. No one else does that. No one finishes a rugby career and then just starts learning how to play the bass and then writes these songs and becomes as successful in as different an area. It's incredible, but you're also very humble about it as well. Your humility was kind of outlined there whenever you wished you talked about Earlsy's career in the episodes. It's all about you. So anyway, one of my favorite things about retirement has been working with you and hanging out with you every week. So I just can't wait till we buy that house in Mullingar, move in together, and then we just commute at the weekends and see our wives and kids.
Now you're talking. That's the next dream, man. And we put that dream out there in the universe and it will happen.
Well, I think it's been proved that when you dream something, it will happen. So
here we're coming, Mullingar. We're calling for you.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what a season we've had, Trimby. My God. When you think back to when it started, August last year, electric picnic, Fla and Paulie getting a slap of a dildo on his head. What like that for me was when it all kicked off. And the dildo flowing around electric picnic, like reverbing around the place, just landing on everyone's head. That's when I think about this season, that's what I'll imagine. And then into the World Cup. I mean, we had a World Cup. How fucking long ago does that seem? The disappointment, the frustration, but sitting here on this ground watching it and on the floor with the kids and Jesus, what a time to be alive. I loved it. I loved that time, and I loved sitting in here and or going up to Dublin and talking about it, and the new Irish coaches, and then all of a sudden we've a pandemic. And we've gotten together, we've gotten through this with all our incredible Penguins who have just kept me going with your love and support, and just your never fading support. And then all the guests we've had, I think that blows my mind. When you look at the list of how many international guests from South Africa, with Matt Field and John de Villiers, to Drew Mitchell in Australia, to Finn Russell in France, Michael Bradley and McKinley in Italy, all the Irish players we've had, Kilcoyne, Tyke Burns, Stockdale, Zeebs over in France, John Cooney, Will Addison, Ultan Delan. Love talking to Ultan Delan. Tyke Byrne was brilliant. Then early in the season, the likes of Shane Williams and Raj in the studio, and then our live shows with Greg O'Shea. That was brilliant night. Limerick with Sean O'Brien was brilliant. Just been, isn't that mad? We've talked to loads of people, man.
We've had a great time. And it feels like we're just doing it with a good crowd of Penguins and potholes that we just brought them with us, and they've contributed massively and supported us, and it's been brilliant. I've loved it, Baz. I've absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and of course, our crew that have helped us out, not helped us out, that have literally put us together. Pat, been unbelievable, the amount of stuff he does. We get Pat. Can Pat unmute himself and let his voice ring into our ears? Hello, Pat.
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Wiping away the tears here.
Yeah. Well, look, you're the reason you're the Mick for Hermitage Green. You're the Pat for Baz and Andrew. You get us out of bed and wipe our arses every morning, and give us all the rugby knowledge we need, and line up all the brilliant guests we've had. So, for myself and Trimby, massive thank you.
Cheers, and lads, you've been brilliant this year. It's great fun in the first year, and it keeps kicking on every year. Like, so looking forward to the break, and then also looking forward to launching into it again next year or next season.
Exactly.
It feels very much like the last day of school, and we should be signing each other's shirts and tying and putting our ties around our foreheads and going bananas. So
Let's do it.
listen, we've done it all this season, Baz. We've had live shows, twins, UFO sightings, cats being used as base amps. Next season, we intend to keep the content so wide-ranging that Apple doesn't know what category to put us in. If Pat doesn't go home every night concerned that he'll lose his job, then we haven't done our job. Okay. This is our promise to all you beloved potholes and penguins. We'll be back next year. We'll have more shit movie reviews. We'll have more pathetic, unjournalistic excuses why Ireland haven't been that good. We'll have more average stories about our pets and children. Whether you're a pothole or a penguin, we love you all the same. Penguins have contributed mightily by means of burpee challenges, penguin cartoons, abusing other Irish rugby podcasts, which is always well received, but just generally being lovely. We love you all. And to our lovely, capable team behind the scenes, Pat, Dermot, Paul, Fiona, Anthony. Barry, would you like to sign off one last time for season 2?
Absolutely. This has been Baz and Andrew's House of Rugby here on Joe, together with Guinness. Party on, Trimby.
Party on.